Snark Squad. Babes! We are back on our snark shit. And this morning, we are running on iced coffee and vibes.
Barely hanging on by a literal thread of sanity, but we are absolutely here.
We just got back from Starbucks. And, it was a completely chaotic run.
Completely unhinged.
Right. The line was out the door, the sun was barely up, but we secured the goods, iced coffee's on deck, and babes, we're feeling energized.
Oh, we are so energized.
Or maybe it's just a caffeine high. We're not sure. Either way, we're here.
It is 100% a caffeine high, and I'm leaning all the way into it. I mean, let me just break down this beverage real quick, because it is the only thing keeping my physical form tethered to reality right now.
Yes, please explain the science behind it.
The taste. Unbelievably crisp. It's got that perfect, scientifically calibrated ratio of cold brew to whatever completely artificial, chemically engineered sweet cream cold foam I demanded they put on top.
It's literally just chemicals, but we love it.
We do. And the caffeine rush hit me the second the straw touched my lips. I am currently experiencing an absolutely unhinged emotional dependence on this specific coffee order to function today. If I spill this, I am walking out.
I would literally cry for you. But honestly, happy Easter, babes. We are so happy you're here spending your Easter with us. We love that for you, and we love that for us.
Yeah, I do want to formally log a complaint with the universe, though. We pulled up to the studio so early this morning.
So early.
It was pitch black outside. The birds weren't even awake yet. The nocturnal animals were looking at us like you were crazy. And I'm dragging my bags out of the car thinking, why are we doing this?
Because, babes, we are back on our Easter nonsense.
Exactly. We have a completely packed schedule today. So yes, an early morning holiday weekend recording session it is. But secretly, I kind of love the chaos. I thrive in the pressure cooker of holiday morning.
You really do. And for anyone watching the video feed right now, yes, babes, we are wearing rainbow colors. Because it's Easter. And it just feels right.
We are leaning entirely into the visual.
I've got the pastel pinks and the soft yellows going on. I am, giving you spring awakening.
And I'm in this aggressively bright mint green situation. It is honestly so bright in the studio right now with these outfits reflecting the ring lights. I feel like I need polarized sunglasses just to look across the table at you.
We look like a pack of rogue highlighter pens.
We really do. It's a visual assault, but it's festive. And it really sets the stage for the absolute madness we are about to unpack.
It is very festive. Okay, so before we get into the actual meat of today's deep dive, we need to shift gears for a second. We've been wanting to cover the show for a while, but we have to give a massive shout out to Louise.
Oh, yes.
Because Louise slid into the comments and specifically requested that we cover this. Louise, babes, we see you, we love you, and babes, we are here.
We truly do love you, Louise. Even though the source material you requested has sent me into an absolute analytical tailspin this morning.
A total spiral. Because off mic, right before we started, we were having this massive debate. We realized today's show is actually based on a novel by Araminta Hall. Right.
And whenever we bring up books, especially in online book communities, we inevitably end up talking about the discourse.
The absolute toxic wasteland of online book discourse.
Exactly. And the cultural discourse right now is wild. Why do people violently reject reading about imperfect, flawed characters who make mistakes?
It's the ultimate question of modern media consumption. The second a fictional character does something messy, the internet comes for them with pitchforks and long-form video essays demanding their cancellation.
It makes me so emotional because for me, reading about messy people is exactly how we connect to the human experience.
Yeah.
I was looking at this massive Reddit thread the other day about this book, The Good Girl Effect by Sarah Kate.
Oh, I saw that thread.
It was wild. So the premise is that the male lead is a widow with a young daughter, and the female lead ends up being the nanny. And the book heavily features the absolute devastating reality of grief.
Which is heavy. Super heavy. And the male lead, because he is so deeply broken by the sudden loss of his wife, makes some genuinely terrible decisions, like temporarily abandoning his daughter to stay with his sister because he literally cannot function.
And people lost their mind.
They did. The reviews. People were absolutely bashing him, calling him an awful, irredeemable, toxic person.
They completely stripped away the context of trauma and just turned it into a massive black and white morality debate.
Exactly. And I'm just sitting here reading these reviews, gripping my phone, thinking, what did these people want? The author wasn't glorifying his actions. It was framed as a terrible, gut-wrenching mistake born from profound psychological pain.
Yeah.
I want to see characters fuck up. I want to see them hit rock bottom and then do the grueling work to fix themselves. Because I make mistakes.
We all do.
Right. I am not perfect, and I try to work on myself. It feels incredibly validating to see that represented in media. We are all walking around making mistakes. Why do we demand our fictional characters be these sanitized cardboard cutouts of perfection?
Okay, let's unpack the psychology of this, though, because I am going to push back on you a little bit here with a healthy dose of snark, but also a little bit of sociological reality.
Bring it.
Here is the mechanism behind why people react that way. A massive portion of the audience reads and watches TV for what the publishing industry quietly refers to as competence porn.
Competence porn. Yeah.
They are seeking pure escapism. Think about it. If I want to see people making incredibly immature, toxic, destructive decisions, I don't need to buy a 400-page hardcover novel or pay for a premium streaming subscription.
No, you just open your phone.
Literally.
Yeah.
I could just scroll through my own text history from my mid-20s. Or I could look at my friends' group chats right now. People deal with bureaucratic nonsense, emotional immaturity, and sheer incompetence all day long in the real world.
That is so true.
When they finally sit down at 9 p.m. to consume media, they don't want a mirror reflecting the exhaustion of reality. They want green flags. They want the absolute fantasy of people actually communicating effectively, setting healthy boundaries, and doing the right thing.
But wait, where is the conflict in that? If everyone goes to therapy and communicates perfectly in chapter 1, where is the growth? What is the story?
The conflict can be entirely external, like a dragon attacks the village, a meteor is falling toward Earth, a corporate conglomerate is trying to buy the beloved local bakery.
Okay, the bakery trope is elite.
It is. But it doesn't have to be, I am a 40-year-old adult who suddenly forgot how to use my words and abandoned my grieving child.
I mean, fair.
There is a massive psychological difference between a character being flawed, like maybe they are a little anxious, or they are cynically sarcastic, or they burn dinner, and a character being fundamentally cruel or negligent.
Right, there are levels to it.
Exactly. For a lot of people, something like parental abandonment hits a raw nerve. It triggers a moral disgust response. It crosses a line from messy realism into, I actively hate this person, I feel unsafe in their narrative, and I refuse to spend my precious free time inside their head.
Okay, I hear that. I completely understand that everyone has triggers, and we all read or watch TV for vastly different reasons. Some people want a warm hug, and some people want to be thrown into a psychological washing machine.
A psychological washing machine is the perfect way to describe it.
But I still stand by my deep need for connection through imperfection. So we're asking the Snark Squad right now, directly, what do you prefer?
Tell us.
When you sit down with a show or a book, do you want perfect escapism and green flags all the way down, or do you want messy realism? Do you want characters who make the same toxic, impulsive mistakes you do? We want to know where you stand on this. Let us know in the comments.
I will be in the comments meticulously analyzing and judging your answers, obviously.
Obviously. Well, babes, if you hate messy characters, you are going to absolutely hate the people we are talking about today.
Oh, they are the worst.
Because we are looking at Apple TV Plus's new series, Imperfect Women. And let me tell you, these women are incredibly imperfect.
The title is not lying. It is a promise, and they deliver on that promise so hard.
They really do. It is arguably the most accurate title in television history. We are looking at the first 2 parts today. Part 1, Eleanor, and Part 2, Crush. And then let me tell you, I have notes.
I have pages of color-coded notes mapping out the sheer audacity of these people.
But wait, before we even hit the plot of the premiere, we have to talk about the actual real-world world premiere that happened in Los Angeles.
We have to. It's mandatory.
Because the drama started before the show even aired. The narrative outside the show was almost as fascinating as the narrative inside the show.
Oh, the red carpet. It was an absolute masterclass in awkward Hollywood dynamics and the mechanics of public relations.
It was so deeply uncomfortable.
Let's set the scene. First of all, Kerry Washington showed up in this stunning Zuhair Murad piece, and she looked absolutely flawless. The leg placement, the hand placement, the smile. She is a seasoned professional. She knows exactly how to work the cameras.
An angel walking among us. She never misses. My jaw was physically on the floor when those Getty images dropped.
But the internet, being the hyper-observant machine that it is, immediately spiraled past Kerry's dress and focused entirely on Elizabeth Moss.
Oh my gosh, the body language.
Because in all the group photos, Elizabeth Moss is standing there, visibly avoiding touching or embracing her co-stars.
It was glaring.
She's doing this bizarre pose with her hips pushed back, her arms pinned to her sides, and her shoulders hunched forward, keeping this incredibly distinct, almost magnetic physical distance from Kerry Washington and Kate Mora.
People were ruthless online. The comments were flooding in like, she looks so uncomfortable. Do they hate each other?
And then, of course, the Snark squad of the wider internet brought up the Scientology of it all.
Naturally. The internet never forgets.
Never. The comment sections on these fashion blogs were flooded with people saying, oh, she can't let other people's thetans infect her.
Which is so shady.
Look, let's look at the mechanics of this objectively. Maybe she was just trying to do a specific slimming red carpet pose she learned years ago that completely backfired from that specific camera angle and ended up looking incredibly stiff.
Red carpets are high-stress environments, I get it.
They are, but the juxtaposition is what matters here.
Yeah.
You have Kerry Washington serving high-fashion glamour, projecting total unity and warmth, and Elizabeth Moss looking like she was forced to be there at gunpoint, actively rejecting the physical space of her castmates.
It really set the tone for the absolute mess of fractured friendships we were about to watch on screen. It's like the real-world PR narrative was accidentally mirroring the toxic dynamics of the script.
It really did. Life imitating art, or art imitating life.
Okay, so let's get into part one, Eleanor. We open the series in a sterile, fluorescent-lit police interrogation room, and instantly I am gasping.
The lighting alone is enough to induce panic.
Kerry Washington, who plays our lead, Eleanor is sitting there, and the detectives are questioning her. It is tense, it is quiet, you can literally hear the hum of the lights.
And she's doing this melancholic voiceover about how she and her two best friends, Mary and Nancy, had this decades-long bond, a 25-year friendship that was supposed to last forever. They were supposed to be the exception to the rule.
But the stark reality is, she's sitting in a police station in a crumpled outfit, and one of her friends is dead.
Which is a hell of an opening hook.
So good. So we flash back 11 hours earlier. It's supposed to be a celebration. It's Mary's birthday. Mary is played by Elizabeth Moss. The three besties, Eleanor, Mary, and Nancy, played by Kate Mara, are having this ridiculously fancy dinner.
Right, at one of those restaurants where the plate is massive and the food is tiny.
Exactly. But Nancy is acting incredibly anxious. She's checking her phone constantly, vibrating with this nervous energy. The vibe is entirely off from the moment they sit down.
And this is where the first major fracture in the foundation happens.
Yeah.
Let's examine the mechanics of toxic female friendships for a second.
Let's do it.
Mary gets up to go to the bathroom. And the second, the literal, absolute, she is out of earshot, Nancy drops a massive bomb on Eleanor.
Oh my God, the timing of it.
Nancy confesses that she is having a torrid affair, and she hasn't ended it like she promised Eleanor she would.
I have to pause here. I need to put you on the spot, and I need the listeners to think about this too.
Okay, ask it.
If your best friend is having an affair and she tells you, are you telling the third bestie in the group? Or are you keeping the secret? Because Mary is entirely oblivious right now, washing her hands in the restroom while her reality is being rewritten at the table.
If we are in a 25-year ride-or-die trio, and you drop a bomb of that magnitude while the third person is in the restroom, that is not an accident. That is highly strategic.
Say more about that.
This is textbook triangulation. Nancy knew exactly what she was doing. She weaponized that secret to create an exclusive dyad with Eleanor, actively marginalizing Mary. She wanted Eleanor to carry the burden of the secret, to be complicit.
Wow. Yes.
And honestly, if you look at the sociology of this friend group, it makes sense. Mary's life is presented as this chaotic, overwhelming suburban mom existence with 3 kids and 1 on the way, constantly putting out fires.
Just a mess.
Right. Eleanor, on the other hand, is the single, polished, career-driven boss at an international nonprofit called Rescue and Relief.
The savior complex is real.
So Nancy probably figured Eleanor, who manages global crises for a living, would be better equipped to handle a personal crisis and would be less judgmental than a stressed-out mother. But it is an incredibly shady move. It's an economy of secrets, and Nancy just inflated the currency, completely excluding Mary from the transaction.
It is so shady, and Eleanor's response is very direct, very crisis manager. She tells Nancy that this affair isn't liberating her. It's making her miserable, it's dangerous, and she needs to end it immediately.
She gives her an ultimatum.
Exactly. So dinner ends, they pay the exorbitant bill, and you think everyone is going home to sleep it off. But Eleanor does not go home. Babes, she goes to the apartment of her employee, Jordan.
An absolute walking HR nightmare.
I was screaming. She hooks up with him. The boss of Rescue and Relief is seeking relief from her 20-something subordinate.
Which is such a massive abuse of power, but we just gloss right over it because the drama is so intense.
We really do. And then, at 3 a.m., While she is in Jordan's bed, Eleanor's phone rings. It's Robert, Nancy's husband, played by the incredibly intense Joel Kinnaman.
Oh, intense.
And Robert is frantic. He is hyperventilating because Nancy never came home from the dinner.
Which is when Eleanor makes her next highly questionable, deeply arrogant decision. Robert says he wants to call the police. That is the logical, rational response when your spouse is missing at 3 a.m. in a major city. You call the authorities.
Normal behavior.
Right. But Eleanor, utilizing her crisis management persona, talks him out of it. She insists on coming over to talk in person first, operating under the assumption that Nancy is just at her lover's house making a mistake.
Which is a wild assumption to make when someone is missing.
So Eleanor gets dressed, rushes over to Robert's massive, stupidly expensive architectural marvel of a house, and spills the beans. She violates Nancy's trust. She tells Robert about the affair. She gives him the lover's first name, David.
And Robert's reaction is so restrained. It's eerie. He doesn't scream. He doesn't throw things. He just asks in this very quiet, devastating voice if Nancy was done with him.
It's chilling.
It is. But before they can even process this massive emotional betrayal, the actual police arrive at the house. And it is the worst possible news. Nancy wasn't at her lover's house. Nancy's body was found in Arroyo Seco Park. She was brutally beaten to death.
And this leads to a fascinating detail. Who goes to the morgue to formally identify the body?
Wait, yeah.
Not the husband, Eleanor. Eleanor, the friend, goes to identify Nancy.
That is so dark.
The police then immediately drag Eleanor into the interrogation room we saw at the very beginning of the episode. They tell her not to leave town. They treat her like a prime suspect.
As they should.
Right. Because think about the optics from a law enforcement perspective. She was the last one to talk to Nancy at the restaurant, and they found her at the victim's house, alone with the victim's husband, before the sun even came up. The narrative practically writes itself. The optics are horrendous.
They really are. I was sweating for her. So Eleanor gets released, shell-shocked, and she has to do the hardest thing imaginable. She goes to Mary's chaotic house to break the news that their best friend of 25 years has been murdered.
A terrible conversation to have.
Awful. He tells Mary everything. The death, the police, the affair, the fact that Nancy was probably meeting her lover in the park when she was killed, and Mary's reaction, "Babes, I was screaming at my television. I had to pause it and walk around my living room."
Mary is furious. But let's analyze the precise nature of her fury here.
Yes, please do.
She's not just furious about the murder. She is furious that she was left out of the affair secret. She is genuinely, actively making her friend's brutal murder entirely about her own exclusion from the group chat.
It is so messed up.
I have to ruthlessly roast Mary's priorities here, but we also have to understand the psychology. Your friend of a quarter century is dead in a park, and your primary emotional response is, "I can't believe you guys didn't CC me on the gossip email."
It's what?
It is the absolute height of narcissism. But it's also a recognized psychological phenomenon, the defense mechanism. It is easier for Mary's brain to process the anger of being socially excluded than it is to process the unfathomable existential terror of her best friend being beaten to death.
Right, like anger is easier than grief.
Exactly. She is latching on to a manageable anger to avoid a completely unmanageable grief.
It's so toxic, but when you explain it like that, it makes a twisted kind of sense. She's deflecting the pain.
Really?
But wait, we need to pause the plot for a second. We cannot move forward without talking about the wardrobe. Because we were spiraling in the studio this morning about this, and the entire internet is spiraling right there with us.
The wardrobe is an act of aggression.
Who did Kerry Washington dirty like this?
The costume design on this show is an act of visual violence. I'm not exaggerating. Kerry Washington is a stunningly beautiful, elegant woman, and they have purposefully dressed her in the most aggressively, frumpy, ill-fitting, hideous garments I've ever seen on premium television.
It is shocking.
We need to talk about what the wardrobe department was trying and failing to achieve here.
The denim, the endless, heavy, frumpy denim outfits. Top and bottom, she looks like she's wearing a denim suit of armor that doesn't fit.
It's so stiff.
And then there was that pink scuba material top. I can't even...
Oh, the pink top. The pink top with the massive, flat, incredible, distracting, puffy flower attached right to the collarbone area.
Yes.
With the balloon sleeves. It was physically impossible to focus on the heavy, dramatic dialogue in that scene because this fabric flower was dominating the frame.
It was taking up half the screen.
The internet hilariously called it her "I smell a fart" era because Carrie keeps making this pained, tight-lipped facial expression to convey stress. And paired with that bizarre avant-garde clown outfit, it's camp. It has to be intentional camp.
I feel like they're using frumpiness as visual shorthand to show that Eleanor is losing control of her life, but they overshot the mark into total absurdity.
They absolutely did.
And it's not just Carrie. Kate Moranancy shows up in a flashback to her daughter's 16th birthday party looking like she is auditioning for Sandy in a community theater production of Grease.
Oh my gosh, yes.
She's got this weird off-the-shoulder top and tight pants. It doesn't fit the aesthetic of a billionaire's wife at all.
Not even a little bit. And Elizabeth Moss, poor, talented Elizabeth Moss.
Yeah.
They put her in what Reddit incredibly accurately described as Mormon pinafores.
The accuracy of that description.
There's a scene where she's carrying a laundry basket, wearing this washed-out, shapeless yellow dress, layered over a T-shirt, and she looks completely helpless, sexless, and defeated.
It's so sad.
Which, okay, maybe that is the exact point for the overwhelmed pregnant mom character. They are visually stripping her of any agency, but it is so jarring. The only one who looks consistently good is Joel Kinnaman, because he gets to wear tailored suits and tuxedos.
The Scandinavian tuxedo effect. It's a real phenomenon. You put a tall Nordic man in tailoring and he looks invincible. Okay, moving on to the funeral. The grief is heavy in the air. Nancy's teenage daughter, Cora, is an absolute wreck. She pulls Eleanor aside at the church and whispers that she doesn't feel safe with her dad, Robert.
On flag number 1.
Massive red flag. And Robert's family, who are literal billionaires, his dad founded an empire called Hedgerow Capital. They swoop in. They bring Robert's sister, Kit, and a literal crisis PR firm to manage the funeral.
Let's analyze this rich people toxicity for a second, because it is fascinating.
Please.
Your wife is murdered, and your family's immediate instinct is not emotional support, it is narrative control. Like, let's control the optics.
That's so gross.
They set up this highly controlled, elitist, invite-only memorial service. The programs handed out to the guests are printed on paper made from lime and rose petals, harvested from Nancy's own garden.
Unhinged?
It is so unhinged. It is the complete aestheticization and commercialization of mourning. It is wealth masquerading as grief.
Yeah.
And then we have Kit, Robert's sister, dropping that line to Mary.
Oh, that line.
Mary brought her young kids to the funeral because she couldn't get a sitter on short notice for a murder memorial. Which, fair. And Kit looks at her and says, "I'm so sorry you couldn't find childcare on such short notice."
Gasps.
It was the smoothest, sharpest, most devastating rich person verbal slap I have ever witnessed. It was a masterclass in passive aggression.
So brutal, I felt that slap through the screen. Meanwhile, the police actually get a lead. They name a suspect. Davide Haji Boyette. D.H. Boyette. He's a local artist, a painter, and it turns out Nancy was a massive patron of his. She even has one of his very large, very intimate paintings hanging prominently in her house.
And upon hearing this news, Robert loses his absolute mind. He rips this massive painting off the wall, a painting of his wife, naked, by the way, drags it outside, and violently trashes it out on the pavement in front of his house.
It was a terrifying scene.
He is throwing a massive, terrifying temper tantrum. He is physically destroying the image of his wife because he can't control the narrative of her life anymore.
Which leads us to the end of part 1. Robert goes to Eleanor's apartment to apologize for his outburst. He is standing at her door wearing a tuxedo.
For no reason.
Why? Because he and Nancy had season tickets to the opening night of a ballet, and he decided to go anyway to, quote-unquote, feel her with him, and then he asked Eleanor to go with him.
Days. It has literally been a matter of days since his wife was brutally beaten to death in a public park. The police are actively investigating, and he is asking her best friend out on a high society ballet date.
It's crazy.
The audacity is staggering.
And Eleanor says yes. I gasped. The audacity of both of them. She puts on an evening gown, and they walk into this highly public ballet venue together, and the episode ends with them being photographed from afar by some creepy guy in a denim jacket who lowers his camera and literally says the boss's daughter cleans up real nice.
Which is so incredibly ominous. It introduces a massive new variable. Who is the boss? Why is Eleanor a nonprofit manager under organized surveillance? It's a fantastic, deeply unsettling hook for the end of a pilot.
So good. So that launches us right into part 2, Crush. And babes, let me tell you, the title is accurate. We are back at the ballet. Eleanor and Robert are sitting next to each other in the dark theater. The tension is thick enough to cut with a knife.
You could practically see the sparks.
Eleanor's voiceover reveals a massive piece of context here. She actually knew Robert before Nancy did. She introduced them, and there was always this unspoken, magnetic connection between her and Robert.
A connection that is currently manifesting in real time as Robert's hand creeping closer and closer to Eleanor's on the armrest in the dark of the theater.
I was yelling at my TV, stop it.
It is highly inappropriate. It crosses every conceivable boundary of grief and friendship. But before they can actually interlock fingers and cross the Rubicon, Robert gets a text message. It's a leaked paparazzi photo of Nancy resting her head affectionately on Davide's lap at a party.
Ruined the mood completely.
The romantic mood is instantly shattered by the reality of the dead wife's secret life.
So Robert drops Eleanor off at home. And who is waiting in the shadows for her? Jordan, the employee she hooked up with.
Of course he is.
And Jordan drops the biggest bombshell of the episode. He confronts her about the timeline of the night of the murder. He says, you texted me at 9 p.m. saying you're coming over, but you didn't show up at my place until 1 a.m.
Babes.
The missing 3 hours. Where was she? Is Eleanor the killer? My brain was short-circuiting.
It is the absolute classic unreliable narrator trope, executed perfectly.
Perfectly.
The show lulled us into a false sense of security. Because we heard Eleanor's voiceover, and because we followed her perspective from the interrogation room, we inherently trusted her. We assumed we saw her whole night.
We really did.
But the writers brilliantly hid a massive 3-hour gap in the timeline, and Eleanor's solution to this incredibly suspicious, dangerous confrontation from Jordan.
Oh my gosh.
She doesn't explain herself. She just aggressively hooks up with Jordan again to shut him up and change the subject.
I lost my mind.
It is toxic. It is deeply manipulative, and honestly, from a legal standpoint, it is a terrible strategy. She is creating a hostile witness.
I was yelling at the screen, you cannot sleep your way out of a murder timeline.
You really can't.
The next day, things get even messier on the other side of town. Mary is completely unhinged. She submits 2020 public records requests to the police department demanding files on Davide.
That poor precinct.
She doesn't believe Davide is the killer because she looked up his record, and he was technically arrested for robbery in the past, not violent murder. She ends up going to the police station and gets detained for basically assaulting a police officer out of sheer frustration.
I live for Mary's absolute chaotic spiral. It's fascinating to watch.
It really is.
Let's talk about how grief is portraying itself here. This is active versus passive coping. Eleanor is passively coping by dissociating, wearing weird clothes, and almost sleeping with her dead friend's husband. Mary is actively coping.
Very active.
She is the only one actively trying to solve the case.
Yeah.
Even if she is doing it in the most illegal, harassing, self-destructive way possible. She refuses to be the passive, grieving friend in the background.
Wow, yes.
Her need for justice is actually a desperate need for control over an uncontrollable, terrifying universe. If she can solve the puzzle, maybe the world makes sense again.
Meanwhile, Eleanor is out for a run in Los Angeles and realizes she's being followed by that same black truck from the ballet. She stops, confronts the guy, and we find out the guy works for Donovan. And Donovan, played by the amazing Leslie Odom Jr., is Eleanor's brother.
Yes, and we need to pause briefly to address the visual choices made for Leslie Odom Jr.
Oh, boy.
They gave him this bizarre, sloped, 1989 high-top fade twist haircut. It is structurally confusing and highly distracting.
I couldn't stop looking at it.
But his dialogue, fantastic. He is the only person on this entire show operating with fully functioning brain cells. He warns Eleanor that she has a massive blind spot when it comes to Robert and his toxic, wealthy family.
Such a good scene.
He drops the absolute best, most insightful line of the episode, referring to Robert and Nancy as interracial Ken and Barbie. He tells Eleanor to stay far away, explaining the brutal reality of class and race dynamics.
Yes.
He warns her that Robert's billionaire family will absolutely frame her, the black friend who was at the house at 3 a.m. to protect their own son. It is a chilling dose of reality.
He was spitting absolute facts. The systemic reality of that situation is terrifying. But does Eleanor listen to her very smart brother? No.
Of course not.
Instead, she bails Mary out of the police station, and Mary somehow convinces her to go confront Davide at his art gallery. And babes, I was side-eyeing Eleanor so hard because she wore stiletto heels to go interrogate a potential murder suspect in an industrial loft.
It's the sheer impracticality for me.
She could barely walk over the concrete floors.
But they confront Davide, and he drops some incredibly harsh truths on them. He says Nancy approached him to paint her specifically because she wanted him to paint the massive scars on her body from a horrific car accident she caused years ago.
Which they didn't even know about.
Right. And then he flips the script on Eleanor and Mary. He shames them. He asks where they were while Nancy was spiraling into depression. He points out that for best friends of 25 years, they were remarkably oblivious to how much agonizing psychological pain Nancy was actually in.
It was a read, a complete devastating read. And it shakes Eleanor to her core. She goes back to Robert's house to help him pack up Nancy's personal things to take to their second home in Ojai.
Because, of course, these billionaires have a sprawling architectural retreat in Ojai.
Of course they do. Real estate is the ultimate accessory for these characters, and Robert manages to convince Eleanor to drive up to Ojai with him to finish the job.
Which, from a psychological standpoint, is a terrible, terrible idea.
The worst.
The physical isolation of the mountains, the shared trauma, the packed boxes of the dead wife's intimate belongings, it is a pressure cooker. It is a recipe for complete disaster.
They get to Ojai. The emotional tension finally boils over. Eleanor is crying, breaking down about how she missed the signs of Nancy's pain, how she failed as a friend. Robert is comforting her. They lock eyes. They kiss.
Oh, God.
And then, babes. Well, no ellipses, but babes, they have sex on the couch. I was screaming into the microphone.
It is the absolute worst.
The absolute ultimate betrayal. Sleeping with your freshly dead best friend's husband, surrounded by cardboard boxes filled with her clothes.
It is the trashiest, most soapy development.
Yeah.
But let's look at the underlying mechanism here. This is the intersection of grief and libido.
Gross.
It is. But it is a very real, very documented biological drive. When people are surrounded by the overwhelming reality of death, there is a primal, desperate urge to feel alive, to feel bodily connection.
I guess that makes sense biologically.
It was entirely inevitable from the second their hands almost touched at the ballet.
Yeah.
But seeing the visual of it happen was still shocking. It is the ultimate violation of female boundaries.
But the show wasn't done with us. We haven't even hit the peak yet.
Not even close.
Middle of the night, Eleanor wakes up in Ojai. She feels guilty. She starts digging through Nancy's things in the boxes. She opens a journal, and out falls a folded letter. A letter written by Robert, addressed to Nancy.
The smoking gun.
And in the letter, Robert explicitly apologizes for overreacting and scaring her when he found out about her affair.
The revelation. The absolute jaw-dropping, narrative-shifting cliffhanger. Robert knew. Robert knew about the affair before Nancy was murdered.
My mind was blown.
Let's trace this back. When Eleanor rushed over to his house at 3 a.m. on the night of the murder and dramatically confessed the affair to him, he was acting. His quiet devastation was a performance. He lied to Eleanor's face, and more importantly, he lied to the police.
Exactly.
It gives him an immediate, glaring, undeniably powerful motive for murder.
And the episode ends with Robert walking into the dimly lit room, catching Eleanor holding the letter. She looks at him, he looks at her, and Joel Kinnaman gives her this terrifying, blank, ominous stare. It was chilling. My blood ran cold.
He activated his full RoboCop protocol.
What?
The dead, cold, shark-like eyes. The realization that she now holds the physical proof of his motive. It is a terrifying implication, and it completely shifts the power dynamic of the entire show.
Totally.
We have to ask ourselves, is he just a grieving, humiliated husband who made a mistake by lying to protect his pride? Or is he a calculating sociopathic monster who beat his wife to death in a park and is now actively seducing her best friend to keep her quiet and monitor her?
We don't know.
The ambiguity is brilliant.
I am so stressed out just recounting this. My heart rate is elevated.
Right.
Which brings us perfectly into a massive debate we need to settle for segment 1. We need to officially crown the most imperfect character. If you had to identify the absolute architect of this mess, who is the messiest person on this show so far?
Oh, the candidates are incredibly strong. We have a roster of absolute disasters.
We really do.
We have Eleanor, who is currently sleeping with her subordinate employee, actively gaslighting him about a missing 3-hour window on the night of a violent murder, and casually hooking up with her dead best friend's husband on a couch in Ojai. That is a solid, undeniable resume for the messiest character.
Then we have Mary. Mary, who made her friend's brutal murder a referendum on her own popularity within the high school-esque friend group. She started chain smoking again around her kids. She is verbally abusing her highly supportive husband. She is harassing police officers to the point of physical arrest. And she is spiraling into absolute obsessive red stream conspiracy board paranoia.
And we cannot forget Robert. Robert, who throws terrifying, violent temper tantrums in his driveway, destroying expensive art. Robert, who lets his billionaire PR family run a smear campaign against a local artist to take the heat off him.
So bad.
And Robert, who actively, smoothly lied to the police detectives and his dead wife's best friend about knowing she was cheating on him, all while playing the weeping widower.
I am leaning toward Eleanor. I really am. Yeah, the sheer emotional betrayal of everything she's doing is astounding to me. She is the keeper of all the secrets, and she's using them to manipulate every single situation she walks into.
I mean, true.
Plus, she is missing 3 hours. For all we know, she was in the park with a baseball bat. She is chaotic evil right now.
I see your point, but I have to ruthlessly crown Robert the king of red flags.
Okay, lay out the case.
Here's why. Eleanor's messiness feels entirely reactive. It is driven by immense guilt, terrible boundaries, and panic. Robert's messiness feels strategic.
Ooh, that's a good distinction.
Letting your family's crisis PR team leak private photos to the press to destroy a man's reputation, lying directly to the detectives' faces while maintaining perfect eye contact, seducing the woman who knows too much. That takes a level of cold, calculated manipulation that terrifies me. Eleanor is a mess. Robert is dangerous. He is the most imperfect.
Okay, fair. That distinction between reactive and strategic is terrifying. But now we have to flip the script for segment 2. Who do we defend? We have to find the one character whose toxic or messy behavior we will fiercely defend, even if they are technically in the wrong. Who are you protecting?
I will go first. I am planting my flag firmly in the ground, and I am defending Mary's husband, Howard, played by the perpetually underrated Corey Stoll.
Really? Howard, the guy in the background?
Yes. Listen to the dynamics of that household. Howard is the only person in Mary's life actually grounded in reality.
I mean, you're not wrong.
In episode 1, Mary viciously berates him at the funeral. She takes a jab at him because he doesn't believe in shielding their young kids from the reality of grief. He wants to explain it to them honestly.
Right.
But if you look at the reality of that house, Mary is spiraling out of control. She is obsessing over police reports, getting arrested, and entirely ignoring her family. Howard is the one carrying the invisible emotional labor.
He really is doing it all.
He's cooking the meals, watching the toddlers, and trying to impart some healthy emotional processing about death to his children, all while his wife is off playing amateur detective and fighting cops in the street. Howard deserves a medal. I will defend him and his sensible parenting to the end.
Okay, I actually love that take. Poor Howard is just trying to keep the lights on while his wife fights crime. But my defense, I am defending Jordan, the coworker.
The walking HR violation. The man jeopardizing his career for a hookup.
Yes, the HR violation. Hear me out on this.
I'm listening.
Yes, he is sleeping with his boss, which is a terrible, fireable career move. But he is the only person in Eleanor's entire life asking for the damn receipts.
Okay, true.
When Eleanor tries to gaslight him about the timeline and seduces him to shut him up, he doesn't just roll over initially. He says, no, you texted me at 9 and you got here at 1. He is holding her accountable. Where was she for 3 hours? Jordan is the true, unsung detective of this show. He is looking at the data.
I am going pushback incredibly hard on that analysis. Jordan is not a detective. Jordan is a needy, unwitting prop in Eleanor's play. He confronts her about the timeline, sure, but the second she bats her eyelashes and invites him inside, he completely drops the interrogation.
He's just weak.
He lacks object permanence. He lets himself be used as a convenient alibi and a sexual distraction. He has zero backbone. He is actively defending a woman who ignores him in public and treats him like a late-night delivery service. Have some self-respect, Jordan.
He is digmatized. He can't help it. The pheromones are overriding his logic.
He is a tragedy of his own making. Which brings us to segment 3, the ultimate reality check of this entire dynamic. We have to be brutally honest here about ourselves.
Oh, boy.
If we were dropped into this specific 25-year toxic friend group with Eleanor, Mary, and Nancy, could we survive? Could we hang?
Look, I am going to be so deeply real right now. Initially, I would love the drama.
You would.
I would be the person sitting quietly in the corner at Mary's birthday dinner, sipping my expensive wine, just absorbing the absolute chaos of Nancy whispering about her affair while Mary is washing her hands in the bathroom. I would live for the tea. I would be taking mental notes.
Until the heat turned on you?
Exactly. Ultimately, the long-term reality. If Mary turned that paranoid, intense, screaming energy onto me, I would cry. I would immediately start crying, apologize for things I didn't even do, and block all their numbers. I am too soft for this friend group. I cannot handle the confrontational heat.
I wouldn't have even made it to year 5 of the friendship. I would have cut Nancy and Eleanor off ages ago.
You are brutal with the cutoffs.
I am. Think back to a wild detail dropped in episode 1. The second Eleanor casually suggested that Nancy ask Robert for an open marriage to solve her affair. I would have known these people fundamentally lack basic critical thinking skills.
That was such bad advice.
This trio's idea of loyalty isn't actually friendship. It is a Mexican standoff. It is just mutually assured destruction. They don't actually support each other emotionally. They just hoard each other's darkest secrets as collateral, waiting to see who flinches first. It is an exhausting way to live. I would be out. I'd be hanging out with Howard, drinking a cheap beer in the driveway while they all burn their glamorous lives down to the studs.
You and Howard would be absolute besties discussing property taxes while the house burns down.
Okay, moving into segment 4, our reality check before we wrap up. Dissecting the believability of the plot. Is this high camp realism, or is it just pushing the boundaries of logic too far? There are so many structural plot holes to choose from, but I have to start with the police work. The timeline and the evidence gathering in this precinct are an absolute joke.
Yes. Let's talk about the raid.
The police execute a full, massive raid on Robert's multi-million-dollar mansion. They're looking for a motive. They're tearing the place apart, opening drawers, searching everything.
Tossing the whole house.
And you mean to tell me that a team of trained forensics detectives somehow missed a handwritten physical confession letter tucked loosely inside a journal sitting right there in the house?
It's unbelievable.
A letter where the primary suspect explicitly admits to knowing his wife was cheating. But Eleanor, the mistress' best friend, just happens to casually find it at the Ojai house 3 days later when she drops a box. Sloppy. Incredibly sloppy police work.
If Detective Dance was doing her job with any level of competence, Robert would have been in handcuffs by Tuesday afternoon.
Exactly.
It is so incredibly sloppy. It requires a massive suspension of disbelief. But for me, the biggest reality check failure is the timeline of human behavior. I brought this up earlier, but I am still not over the audacity of it.
The ballet.
Yes. Who gets dressed to the nines in a silk evening gown and a tailored tuxedo to go to a highly public, highly photographed societal ballet event mere days after their spouse is brutally murdered in a park?
Nobody.
The optics are insane. Robert's billionaire PR family should have physically tackled him to the ground in the foyer before letting him leave the house. You don't go on a fancy date when you have no alibi for your wife's murder.
And Eleanor agreeing to go. Yeah, the optics are terrible. I am currently a suspect, but let me just grab my stilettos and my puffy flower shirt.
Unbelievable. And speaking of unbelievable, I have a massive real estate reality check.
Let's hear it.
Eleanor is the boss at a nonprofit called International Rescue and Relief. It's a charity. How on earth does she afford an incredibly lavish, massive, perfectly curated, multi-level arts district loft in downtown Los Angeles on a nonprofit salary?
She doesn't.
The square footage alone, the math is simply not mathing.
The television real estate economy never maths. It is a fictional universe where square footage is tied to how dramatic your character arc is. She's paying her rent in secrets, trauma, and dramatic stares into the middle distance.
Honestly true. If trauma paid the rent, she'd own the building. Okay, babes, we have to start wrapping up this absolute chaos of a session. What a spiral we went on today.
An absolute comprehensive spiral. Let's reflect on where we are. We are sitting in a brightly lit studio, dressed like neon Easter eggs, vibrating from excessive cold brew and artificial foam consumption, intensely judging the psychology of fictional women making terrible life choices.
It is, quite frankly, the perfect Friday morning.
It really is.
I feel so vindicated by how deeply, wonderfully, realistically messy these characters are. They are making all the wrong choices, they are crossing every boundary, and I simply cannot look away.
It's like watching a luxury car crash in slow motion, but everyone in the car is wearing terrible denim and lying to each other.
So we are turning it back over to you, the Snark Squad. We asked you earlier, but we want to hear it again now that we've laid out the evidence. Do you like flawed characters now? Have Eleanor and Robert convinced you that the psychological mess is worth the watch?
Who are you actually rooting for in this disaster of a friend group? Are you Team Mary's conspiracy board, Team Eleanor's bad decisions, or Team Howard just wants to grill in peace?
Let us know. We want the debates in the comments. And most importantly, what is your absolute go-to iced coffee order to survive this level of drama? Because we're going to need entirely new caffeine recommendations to get through next week's breakdown.
Drop the exact Starbucks orders in the comments. Ratios, syrups, everything. And while you're there, remind yourself to rate, review, and subscribe. It feeds the algorithm, it supports the show, and it deeply feeds our egos.
Yes. And please send in your shady, snarky, or stupid submissions for our next mailbag session. We want your hot takes, your unpopular opinions, your personal friendship drama, and your absolute messiest stories.
We live for them. We want to read them. But before we let you go to enjoy your holiday weekend, I want to leave you with one final lingering thread from the source material that we didn't fully unpack today. A little analytical homework for your Easter.
Ooh, I love a homework assignment. Give it to us.
Think about this mechanism. In episode 1, Eleanor notices a creepy guy in a denim jacket watching her at the church memorial.
Creepy camera guy, yeah.
Later, at the ballet, a guy in a car takes photos of her and Robert, and he tells the driver, the boss's daughter cleans up real nice.
Right.
In episode 2, we explicitly find out the guy in the truck works for Donovan, Eleanor's own brother. So if Donovan is Eleanor's brother, who exactly is the boss pulling the strings on this surveillance?
Oh my God.
Donovan is running a highly organized intelligence op on his own sister, taking photos of her on dates with a murder suspect. Someone is building a counter-narrative, babes. And it's not just Robert's billionaire PR team. The call is coming from inside the family. Sleep on that.
Oh my God, I have full body chills. The family intelligence op, I'm going to be thinking about that all weekend while I eat chocolate eggs. Snark Squad, please send this analysis to one friend who loves messy characters, complex psychology, and chaotic theories. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on your Easter. We love you all so much.
Seriously, thank you for enabling our spirals and letting us unpack the madness.
Stay caffeinated.
Stay messy.
And we'll see you on the Snark side.